The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is live here on a Friday morning. Remember, if you catch us via the podcast, one, thank you for listening. We do appreciate that, but you can also be a part of the conversation, be a part of the live broadcast. We stream Fridays at 10 a.m., Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. With you as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star. I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Who's catching up to the Kansas City Chiefs? Is anyone catching up to the Kansas City Chiefs? We've had the major wave, the bulk of free agency. That's done. The draft check, that's done as well. So who amongst the real contenders are making up any ground on the Kansas City Chiefs? We'll look at the AFC West. There are a lot of playoff teams in the AFC West. How much ground did they make? And then Bills, Texans, Bengals, Ravens. Are they closing the gap on these Kansas City Chiefs? We're talking about it right here, right now on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is a columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
All right, thank you very much, Curtis. Off and running here, guys. Always like to start with what we learned out of the exercise. I actually learned quite a bit. I mean, I think you always glean something, but this was kind of enlightening. You know, we're so micro-focused on the Kansas City Chiefs. To go ahead and take a look at what these other contenders are doing, I thought was interesting. I'm like, okay, oh, they got this. Oh, they did that. You know, you get a better representation. Jeff, what jumped at you? What'd you learn out of this little exercise we did here?
I think every team's got its own way of going about this, but I think they're all trying to be smart in their own way. You look, obviously we'll talk about each different team here, but I think people realize that there are certain things the Chiefs do well, and that the key to beating them is trying to find ways to offset those things. So I think every team is trying to make one move or a series of moves that allows them to compete better with the Chiefs. And I think they've all been smart about it.
Okay, Sam, what jumped out at you?
I think for the past few years, we've seen a team really like shove its chips to the middle of the table and go all in. And I don't know that we saw a team do that this offseason, that sacrificed the long-term salary cap ramifications in order just to be really good this year. I didn't see a ton of major acquisitions for any of these top contenders for the AFC, because frankly, a lot of them are in similar spots as the Chiefs with salary cap. I think that's one of the things that stood out to me is a lot of these teams are, I think, you know, people in Kansas City, and they're accurate about this, view the Chiefs as a team that is always pressed up against a salary cap that has to be careful. What you see when you go through this exercise and you analyze the other teams is a lot of other teams are in that similar spot.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It is their approach. I hadn't thought about it. Like, who's like the Niners plan? You know, or the Eagles plan really is one of them that looked like it. You know, the Rams a couple of years ago, there wasn't really that kind of move. And yeah, you mentioned it because Josh Allen's expensive, you know?
Yeah. And the Bills were that team like 3 years ago. Remember, they got Von Miller. They added a bunch of bad contracts just to be really good for that particular year.
Yeah, I did come away. We'll get to them in a minute. We'll start with the AFC West, but I know my good friend and colleague Curtis Seabolt, just it's nails on a chalkboard whenever somebody goes, "Boy, the Ravens get the draft." But I think the Ravens get the draft. Like they I think really do a nice job. When I look at what they did and the players they got, I'm like, God, this is one of their guys. Yeah, this is one of their guys. This is one of those guys we're gonna be like, yeah, he's good. And you know, where'd they get him? Wow, they got him in the third round. Like, you know, I came away impressed by the Ravens. I look forward to talking to them because I think they did some good work on this. Let's talk a little bit about, the AFC West. Let's start with the Denver Broncos, right? I think I put them in alphabetical order by team name because that's how I have them bookmarked in my work. So I went Broncos, Chargers, Raiders. I can't say that I did that on the other ones. I don't know how I came up with the order elsewhere, but the Denver Broncos, we'll start with them. Jeff, what do you think? Is this team better? Have they closed the gap on the Kansas City Chiefs?
No, they're better. They're better. And look, I would say this too. I think all these teams, the gap has been closed because you saw all these teams play close games against the Chiefs last year, and the Bills actually beat them. So I think that all these teams feel they're right there. It's just a matter of can they execute in the clutch. But I think Denver in free agency, some of the home run swings, we'll see if Hufanga, the safety, can stay healthy. We'll see if Dre Greenlaw can be the same player he was before he got hurt. But I love the Jahdae Barron draft pick. I think RJ Humphrey is a really good running back for what they want to do. I think he has potential to be a good receiver. Evan Ingram is one of those guys too. The tight end they got. Another guy's got to stay healthy. But if they have all these players stay healthy, it's going to be a good year for the Denver Broncos. The question is whether it actually happens. But I like what Sean Payton and George Payton are doing over there, and I think they're actually in pretty good position with this team because their defense should be even better than last year, and they were sensational last year on that side of the football.
Hey, the 49ers have been pretty good. Let's go get a couple of pieces away from them. I did love – I did not remember that they'd gotten both the Niner guys. I remember they got Hufanga because I like Hufanga. I think when he plays, he's really, really good. He just doesn't play that much. Yeah. So that is a home run swing there. And, for the Broncos, I was kind of surprised that there weren't more moves. Right? They're the team, Sam, with the rookie quarterback. They would seem to have, the cap room to run around. We know they're still bringing out. I'm sure are they still prorating out part of the Russell Wilson deal. But we heard about how that was coming off, and I'm like, okay, let's see this. All this, one of the depth charts I look at, uses different colors for free agents and draft picks. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a really colorful one. Not as much. I was kind of surprised that they didn't have more changes than they did. What did you see in the Broncos, Sam?
Yeah, well, Russell Wilson's still eating up $32 million of their cap. So they have a rookie quarterback in theory, but not in practicality for their salary cap. I think the Broncos made as many moves as most other teams did this year. I mean, we have to keep in mind when we go through this exercise, this was a really weak free agency class across the board, and it limited what teams were able to do in the offseason. But just right, I mean, the Broncos were second in the NFL last year in yards per play. And then they went hard after defense and free agency and the draft. And I don't think they anticipated going through the defense, improving the defense through the draft. I think that they just said, Jahdae Barron is the best player on our board, so we're going to take him. And I think the Panthers probably screwed up with the Broncos draft, for example. I think they were looking at a potential trade up for Ted McMillan, or I know they liked Ashton Genty as well. And I think they wanted to make an offensive splash. And so I really like what their defense, like Vance Joseph, because Barron's a guy you can move around. And they've got Patrick Surtain, obviously. I think Vance Joseph is really going to be able to mix coverages and give teams like the Chiefs some issues with that. Offensively, I'm not as high on Bo Nix as a lot of other people are. I think he's a fine quarterback. I don't think he's a future star in this league. And I think he needs more help offensively than what the Broncos gave them. I don't know. Are we handing out letter grades here, or are we just talking through it?
You can hand out a letter grade. I'm good with that. I'll wing one for you.
I gave the Broncos a B+.
Okay.
I do like. There's one other point. I do like RJ Harvey, the UFC kid. There's some injury concerns about him, but I think it's more like how long can he hold up. But I think early on in his career, I do think that's a pretty good move through the draft, even though it's second round running back, all that stuff. I do think their running backs were really bad last year, considering how good their offensive line was. Their running game should have been better, and I think he could give that a boost.
He's interesting in the sense that he's a former quarterback. Like you read some of the knocks on him, it's like I do like he's a big player. You can see what he's thinking. He's thinking the guy he had in New Orleans.
Darren Sproles. Yeah.
Well, no, even now.
Kamara.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara. That's what he's kind of thinking. They led college football in the most, rushes of over 10 yards. But then you look at negatives. No pass blocking. Oh, that sounds like a quarterback. I'm not sticking my nose in there. I'm a run to daylight, right? Makes guys miss. Goes down easy though, right? So is he going to be able to make guys miss? I'm not as high on him because I think you got to be able to run through arms in the NFL. So I'm not as big on that. I am big on Evan Ingram, but he's like Tafanga. Like when he plays, I think it's a good addition. And I'm with you on what's puzzling, and I think they did it. And if you always make the decision to get the best players for the best value, and you do that year over year over year, in the long run, it's going to pay off. But I don't know that it pays off this year because I think there is some duplication. Great, you're going to be very good defensively, but can you score when you have to score? We know it's going to come down to a game with the Chiefs, with the Chargers. You're going to need to go down and get points with 1:21 on the clock and one timeout. Can you do that? And I don't know that they have the weapons. I think with their defense, you can say, they won't be any close games. Well, if they score more points, And I think now there's a book on Bo Nix, so I think teams will catch up. I'm not quite as high. I'll go B.
They don't need to score. They drafted a punter in the 6th round. They're not preparing to score.
Yeah.
I got no time for drafting a punter either. In fact, you know what? B-. Yeah. That's I forgot about the punter thing. Thank you. B-. Jeff, what ultimately did you give for a letter grade on this one?
A-. I like it. And I would argue that I think they know what Bo Nix is. I mean, this idea that you have to go find somebody to compete with Patrick Mahomes only works when you have Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. Every other team has got to find a way to build a better team to compete with the Chiefs. And so building your defense up makes a lot of sense because if you can't score with them, try to keep them from scoring much. That's what the Eagles did that last year in the Super Bowl. You saw the outcome.
But the Eagles score. I mean, everyone they do fixate. It is, and when somebody does stop the Chiefs, the Bucs and the Eagles, everyone goes, "There it is. There's the plan." But you know what both those teams did too? Score. They put points. Right. And they forced the Chiefs to be one-dimensional and to try to score. I think an underrated part of the Bucs and Eagles ass kicking of the Chiefs in 2 different Super Bowls is that they scored. And we watched this AFC West go out and get DeMarcus Lawrence and go sign all these defensive guys. And that was going to be how they were going to stop Patrick Mahomes, and they all got dusted. I think what the Eagles have is they could score, right? And I think the teams that have beaten them, the Bengals, could score and could put points up. And if the Chiefs are sputtering, they start putting them in a hole. I think the battery's in backwards when you think the game plan to beating the Chiefs is defense.
I remember the Broncos going down the field in that game last year, and it was a blocked field goal that killed them. They weren't struggling to get the ball down the field in that game.
So they did against the Bills in the playoffs. I mean, I think both things can be true. Like you can win a game defensively against the Chiefs. We've seen teams do it, but what did the Broncos really do to address their offense? Because last year they were 20th in the league in pass yards per play. I think they were like 22nd in rush yards per play. Like this was not a good offense last year, and I just don't see the playmakers on that offense that's going to change it, unless you're counting on a 2nd-round running back to change everything.
I think they are counting on that. Oh, and Ingram.
But
if Ingram stays healthy and the running back's good, it's a different offense.
I don't think it's a different offense.
How different?
I think it might be a better offense.
More explosive in the running game, and they actually have a tight end catch passes. Not everybody's trying to put together like a 5-wide score 35 points a game offense. They're clearly playing for the defense.
I guess I'm wondering why they're going to be so much better running the ball. Now, I will tell you that for a long time, I was a big believer that Emmitt Smith was a product of the offensive line, right? Like, back in the day, to go way back, Barry Sanders did more, and there was a reason to like Barry Sanders more because he didn't have the same kind of offensive line. I think that's true. The running back does matter, and Jamal Charles is the guy that really solidified that for me because the Chiefs were averaging like 2.7 yards per carry, and then Larry Johnson got hurt. They went, here's Jamal Charles. Behind the same offensive line that everyone was bitching about, Jamal Charles averaged 6 yards a carry. So the running back absolutely does matter, right? Like I've seen that happen with my own eyes. But I don't think this kid is Jamal Charles. Now, Jamal Charles was a 3rd-round pick, so people didn't think Jamal Charles was Jamal Charles when he came out of Texas.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of with Sam. I don't see where they got Evan Ingram. I like him. He's better than what they had, but he's not a game changer.
I'm not arguing that it's going to happen. I'm just saying that they've added some players. They've upgraded. Their tight ends were horrible last year. So Evan Ingram is a better tight end than they have in the roster. And if this kid, Harvey, is what they proclaim him to be, He's the best running back they've had in the roster in the last couple of years. If he's Bucky Irving, they're a better team.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, let's move on to the Chargers. Jeff, where do you start with what the Chargers were able to do?
I give them a B-. I mean, they didn't really go out and do a whole lot. Obviously, they're going to stay true to Jim Harbaugh's mindset of running the football. You go out and get Najee Harris. You draft Omarion Hampton. That tells you that it's going to be a lot of ground and pound. I think that getting Dante Jackson is a nice rotational piece on the back end, nice depth piece to add to those young corners that have. I think bringing back Khalil Mack and letting Joey Bosa go was smart. But I think ultimately, they're going to be what they were last year. And just as with Denver, I think that we get so caught up in the stars part of this, like Sean Payton in Denver, Jim Harbaugh has a way he wants to play football. And that doesn't mean you have to have all these sexy names on your roster to do it. And we saw it last year. They'll play tougher competition, but I think they're going to be, again, a grinded out, rugged, beat you up type team.
Yeah. All right. What do you think of the Chargers moves?
Really quiet. I thought if you're a Chargers fan, you should be disappointed that they weren't more active, just because you look at the Chargers now, they've got a lot of cap space. And so I've already mentioned it. You've got to grade on the curve that there wasn't a lot out there in free agency, but they basically set it out. And that surprised me because I thought they were a team. I mean, they did make the playoffs last year. I thought they were a team that could have taken a step forward. And the best thing you can point to is what Jeff said, which is the running backs. And I would like to point to something better than you improved your running backs as far as your free agency class, because I mean it's not a premium position. Having said that, it's one of the very, very few teams that I can understand why you would take a running back in the first round. I don't know if you guys know this, but the Chargers last year ran for fewer yards per game than any Jim Harbaugh coached team at any level. College, pros, these never had a team rush for fewer yards per game. And so the reason I said I can understand a running back in the first round, even though I don't love it, is to me, that's an identity pick. Jim Harbaugh is saying, we didn't have the identity as a team I wanted to have last year. And that's what he's trying to establish. So I can understand it from that point of view, but just a really quiet free agency for a team I didn't think needed to be quiet in free agency.
Okay.
I gave them a B-.
Give him a B-. Jeff, what'd you give him?
B-.
B-. Can't help you boys here. I think Jim Harbaugh is playing the long game. He's keeping his cap space. He's got the quarterback. He didn't overspend on a free agent class that, as you said, wasn't that good. And I love what he did in the draft. And, knowing how he wants to play, first of all, he's got 2 left tackles on his roster already, right? So he's solid there. They only had really Ladd McConkey. So they went out and they did add wide receivers, right? That was one of the things that he added. Mike Williams isn't great, but they threw 2 darts with wide receivers in the draft. I like that. And I think Ladd McConkey is going to be a stud. So I think now they've got some weapons to help out the passing game. They had Mekhi Becton at guard, a road grader. I mean, is he going to be healthy? He was last year for the Eagles. I don't know. We'll see. But I think this is a big physical offensive line. And I think they're going to play his style. You mentioned Omarion Hampton. I don't love taking running back in round 1, but and maybe this will go the same way of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I didn't like taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire in round 1, but I love the player. Player ended up being wrong. Maybe I'll be wrong about this player. Love the player. Don't love him in round 1, but love the fit for what they're going to do. I definitely think they're better on offense, and they're already really good on defense. And just getting rid of Bosa, swapping out somebody who will play is an upgrade.
No. Yeah.
It's an upgrade for this team. And, last year defensively, they were what? Number 1 in points allowed, number 11 in yards. I don't think this team was very far. And so the fact that they're keeping their cap room and have an opportunity to go grab somebody, in season, they can add if they need something along the way. They're probably still a year away, but if the winner of the AFC West is not the Kansas City Chiefs, it's the Los Angeles Chargers. I give them an A-. I like it. I like that they didn't cough up a bunch of money on guys that aren't that good. Just to be like, ooh, look at all the names we added. They got a plan and they're sticking to it. I like it a lot. So for what it's worth, there it is. And shocking that I would like Jim Harbaugh's moves, right? I know everybody's stunned by that one. Always like what Gann Asphalt and Concrete can do for your business. Check them out online at GannAsphalt.com. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warning. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot.
Big moves, bigger vibes. If you haven't heard, Besame Wellness is now Suede Cannabis. Our colors and name may have changed, but you'll still experience the same great service on top of better deals, longer hours, and faster delivery. Smithville, Liberty, Kansas City, Warrensburg, and North Kansas City. No matter which location you visit, you'll feel right at home. Find the location nearest you and shop online at SuadeCannabis.com. Life should be dope. Let's make it happen. Suede Cannabis.
All right, let's keep rolling here. The Raiders, last team in the AFC West. We certainly saw the fingerprints of Pete Carroll on the Raiders. I mean, wasn't hard to figure out where he was going. Jeff, thoughts on the Raiders?
Well, again, 3 for 3. Pete Carroll did exactly what Jim Harbaugh and what Sean Payton did. He got a vision of what this team is going to be, and he's sticking with it. And so Ashton Genty coming in the first round. You may not like running backs in the first round, but he's, I think, a special player. He fits what Pete Carroll's always liked, having a bell cow back. He's going to have a lot of opportunities to make an impact on this team and carry this offense. And then trading for Geno Smith. I mean, I think it's Geno isn't exceptional by any means, but he's a solid player. You know what you're getting. Carroll's had success with him in Seattle, and he's the best quarterback the Raiders have had in, 3-4 years? And so I think already they're more competitive just because of that. Now, they didn't do a whole bunch else that was all that sexy, but I think the quarterback, the running back are going to make a big difference for this team. I think they may be the most improved team in the division this year.
Yeah. All right. Most improved means they could still be mediocre, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I say. It's semantics, yeah. Not making the playoffs, so they may make the biggest jump. All right. They're not going to win 10, 12 games, but I think they'll be a better team.
And what was your grade?
I go B+.
B+. Okay. Likes what the Raiders did. Sam, what do you think of the Raiders?
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders made some moves that I think they're going to be better this year. All their long-term questions still remain. Like, who is the long-term quarterback with Vegas? They had the 7th pick. They chose not to address that. Even their coach is 73 years old. I would have liked to have seen them trade the pick with Ashton Genty, just because I think that could have commanded a really big haul. Because I've said this on a previous podcast, but I don't like a running back top 10, but I also understand there's probably only 3 blue chip prospects in the draft. You take one of the 3, maybe there's 4, you take one of the 4 at number 6 overall. So I understand their thinking, but I just know a lot of teams were interested in Ashton Genty, and I really think you could have got a haul. Now, the Raiders probably were like, we already have 11 picks. We don't need a haul. I just don't think that's the way the Raiders should be thinking. And so you've got this team that, to me, should be building for the long term, but they've got Band-Aid solutions this off season. So if you're just grading this off season based on how's 2025 going to look, yes, they have a better roster. They have a competent quarterback, like Jeff said. I mean, I'd trace much back further, than 3 or 4 years, because Derek Carr was not any good his last several years in Vegas. And so you've got competency there. You've got a competent head coach. We all criticized AJ a lot, Antonio Pierce a lot last year because of his 4th down decisions were atrocious. Like he was not well suited for that position. I will point out, for everything that they've done offensively that's going to be seen as a splash move with the quarterback and running back, they lost a lot on defense. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, they lost, the Panthers signed Trayvon Merrick. They lost Nate Hobbs, their cornerback. I think they lost their number 2 cornerback. Like, they lost their linebacker. They lost quite a bit on a defense that was already middle of the pack last year. I think I'm probably going to come in a lot lower than other people here, but I've just got the Raiders at a B.
Okay. You're not going to come in lower because I have them at a B-. I'm not really sure of what the vision is. I think if you're going to have Geno Smith, you need to be badass on offense. And Jack Beck is a great story, right? But I don't see where that's going to get it done. They drafted a quarterback. They're going to convert to wide receiver in a later round. They did take a couple of offensive linemen. I like that. I think that'll fit in depth-wise. I don't know where they're going to play, but Charles Grant, Caleb Rogers, I mean, they at least address the offensive line. They want to run the ball. They obviously want to be physical. So I think that's intriguing. I'm with you. I like Ashton Genty. I think he's going to be a fine player, but how many games is he going to play over 5 years? Most running backs, he's going to play 3.5 seasons worth of games. Maybe he'll be more durable. He's going to be very good. I do like him as
only 1 year that matters.
It's what?
Only this year matters, right?
I mean, only the next couple of years matter. I'm like, what do you mean? Why do you say that?
For this exercise.
Well, for me, I mean, I look at what they're doing beyond now. Like we are talking about, yes, from the standpoint of did they close the gap?
Yeah.
My answer is I don't know. I don't think so. Like if the Chiefs made any ground, then the answer is no. Because I don't know that the Raiders may have gotten appreciably better. I think everybody looks better. And I do think collectively the league is always getting better, right? But
come on, they're undoubtedly. I mean, they were starting Aiden O'Connell at quarterback last year.
You're right. That's fair. That's fair. That's a good point. Geno's, but what's
who's
the
their running back last year? I don't even remember who's
the best case scenario for them is 10-7. That's if everything goes right.
Oh,
they didn't have that best case last year.
Yeah,
that's true.
Ooh, they get 10-7. That's coach of the year stuff for Pete Carroll.
I was with Soren where I graded this. Look, I certainly prioritize is this team better from last year to this year, but I think it has to matter your long term as well. Like let's say the Bears were I think interested in Ashton Genty as well. Would they have the 10th pick, I think, and the Raiders had the 6th?
Yeah.
Let's say the Bears offer you a first and like next year's second or something like that, or maybe next year's first, and then you've got to give back a third or a fourth in the process. That's the type of deal that if I was GMing the Raiders, I would have been looking at. And I thought because the Raiders had made the change at head coach and made the change at general manager, they allowed themselves that runway to think about the long term. Except for they bring in a 73-year-old head coach. And
73-year-old coach who will argue that he made good decisions on running backs that didn't piss a drop in Seattle. I mean, you knew this was coming.
Yeah, that's why I just think there's this contrast of, are the Raiders ready to be this 1-year Band-Aid sort of team? I don't know that was the right solution for this organization.
Yeah. I am going to give them a B-, and I think they are better for this year, no doubt. Geno Smith at least stabilizes the quarterback position. The game will be managed better by Pete Carroll. They will have an approach to what they're doing. They will be a tougher team to beat. They will be better. Yes, that is a very good point. But big picture, did they get closer to winning a championship? No.
Yeah,
I don't think they did.
But they're a long way from that too. And I would add Carroll as part of the offseason moves too. I think they're a better coach team.
He is, but to the point, Jeff, because that's why I gave him a B. Is for what you said. They are considerably better this year. Right. If we're just looking at long term and how close they are to a championship, you mentioned they're a long way for a championship. Are they closer to a championship after this offseason? Because I think the answer is clearly no. They're not closer to a championship.
Well, I always look at it like it's a year-to-year league, so you don't know what moves they're going to make next year. If Geno Smith helps them build a better culture and makes their offensive skill players better, if Ashton Genty is a superstar, then yeah, I think you're closer. I don't think this team's going to win a championship as long as the Chiefs are around and Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton are in this division. I think it's going to be really hard for them to do that, but I think that they can be a lot more competent than they've been in the last few years.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think the culture thing is a good point. I mean, that's maybe the best long-term effects bringing in competency at head coach and quarterback can have.
If he's like Alex Smith to the Chiefs, then I think it's a win.
But I also will tell you that the moment they signed Pete Carroll, they guaranteed they would not win a championship.
I would agree with that too.
So in some ways, you can be like, okay, are they better? They're better if you want to sell a few more tickets and advertise hope in the city of Las Vegas. Are they better in the sense that they're closer to winning a championship? I would say they're further away because they're going to ride this up to their ceiling. They're going to plateau on what they are, and unless they back ass into a third-round quarterback that ends up being a Pro Bowl caliber player, and then they're going to have to rebuild. So in some ways, I would say they're worse because the Pete Carroll hire is not the one that's going to get you over the hump. I think he will make he's the modern day Marty Schottenheimer, but he hit gold with a better quarterback, right? Like that's what he is.
Yeah. Well, what were the Chiefs when Andy Reid showed up? Right.
They were ass. They were a big bucket of ass.
Exactly. It's very similar. They got a good coach and they got a competent quarterback, and then a few years later, guess what showed up? Superstar quarterback.
But I think the difference is Andy Reid wasn't 73.
Yeah, that's the biggest point in all of this. Yeah,
and I think any quarterback he got, he was going to make him as good as they could possibly be. I don't think you can say that about Pete Carroll.
No, but they'll play better defense from the football. He will build a system that one. The thing I'll say about Pete Carroll, young players, he's great with them. And so when he starts struggling, when guys start getting older and want new contracts and all this other stuff. And so young team, he's a good guy to have around.
Okay. I'm fine with that. They're not. And notice, like, what do all the teams that we're now going to turn to, the contenders, have in common? Big time quarterbacks, right? Like we said, any other teams we want to add? No. There's Lamar Jackson, there's Josh Allen, there's CJ Stroud on the cusp of being a big time quarterback. Maybe let's do that. But they have won their division each of the last 2 years, and we have Joe Burrow, right? And so that's who's in this. Let's start with the Ravens, Jeff. What do you think of the Ravens?
It was solid. I think keeping Rodney Stanley was a huge thing for them. That was a vital move, the best left tackle on the market. I like what they did in the draft with Malachi Starks, who I think is a sensational player. And Mike Green might be a steal for them. We all know his off-the-field stuff became an issue, but I've argued for years that one of their biggest issues is not having a really dominant edge rusher or somebody that they scheme it up really well, but having somebody who can go win and dominate a game. They haven't had that since Terrell Suggs was there. But and also getting rid of the kicker. That was a huge elephant in the room for them. And to say goodbye to Justin Tucker is a smart move, and they can go into the season, not having to worry about one, reliability at that position, and two, a whole bunch of headaches off the field.
Yeah, I think it's fair. So grade?
A-.
Hey, Miles, you sounded like kind of milquetoast. I'm like, wow, he's not very big on him.
Well, I mean, what they got was good. If Stanley can stay healthy and Green and Starks hit for you, I'm not a big quantity guy. I like quality, and I think they made some quality moves.
Well, I think they're a really good team. I don't think they need a whole lot, and where the cap is, they couldn't do a whole lot. Sam?
Yeah, I mean, the first move for the Ravens is retaining Ronnie Stanley. All this talk about the Chiefs and Ronnie Stanley in the offseason, like, he was never getting to free agency.
Never leaving Baltimore.
I mean, it never made any sense that they would give up a left tackle. Like, when the team they're competing with, that was their weakness for the last 5 years with the Chiefs. It's like they've got the case study right here. Why did they want to be part of that? So that's the top move, and they got that done. I will say the Ravens allowed the second most passing yards in the league last year. And what did they do to really address the passing game? Because their safeties were not bad last year. So
one was horrible. They benched the one guy, Marcus Williams.
Yeah, well, then the backup, once they flipped Hamilton, and their passing defense does become better. But Marlon Humphrey wasn't the reason. Their cornerbacks beyond Humphrey were not great, and they didn't add in that position. The thing I really compliment the Ravens on is they seem to have this Eagles-like approach of, I don't know if this is the guy we anticipated getting going into the first round, to the second round, the third round. He's a guy that's fallen too far, so we're taking him. This is a guy that a lot of people liked. For whatever reason he's falling on, we're just not going to overthink this, and we're going to take Malachi Starks. He's not the position that we necessarily wanted. He's it's not a premium position. He just shouldn't be on the board still. So we're taking him. And so I really like the way they approach the draft in that sense, because I think it's done the Eagles well. And now the Eagles have more misses than people say that they have, but they've approached the draft well for that reason. So they didn't do a ton in free agency. Like you mentioned, Soren, they didn't have a ton of room to do a ton in free agency. I don't know that Hopkins is going to make a big difference. It seems like they love these veteran wide receivers that are past their prime. And he's probably going to be the latest case of it. But I gave the Ravens a B.
A B. Okay. I'm at the B+ stage. I thought I was going to be the high water mark here.
Let's not act like a B's way off if you got him a B plus.
No, I the way you were talking, I thought it was going to be lower. But I look, they were reserved. I agree. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins. Like, have fun. Like, how many different guys? This goes all the way back to Anquan Boldin finishing his days in Baltimore. Like, they are where receivers go to retire, I guess. But it's okay. They have Zay Flowers. They have Rashad Bateman. They have an excellent tight end. I don't two good tight ends.
Two good tight ends. Yeah.
Their offensive line is good. Ronnie Stanley they kept in place. I don't think they needed much on offense. I mean, I think they're a hell of an offensive team, and so I don't mind. And they drafted some offensive linemen, like I said, that I'm like, oh, that guy will start. He'll be there. Maybe he'll be guard. Maybe he'll be tackle. He'll be right tackle. But he'll start, and if they have to play him at left tackle, they'll be okay. They'll run the run game, some freeze option stuff with Lamar and help him out, and they'll be fine. Like I do like what they did. But you mentioned it, Malachi Starks. You saw a lot of mock drafts put his name with them, but I think it's because they're perpetually. You see a safety put to Baltimore every year since Ed Reed retired. Like everyone's kind of like, well, this is what he wants to get back to. This time, a guy who is a ball hawker was there. He was the best player on the board, and they took him. And the Mike Green thing, listen, I don't know what happened. I know what the allegations are. He's playing football. He's not in jail. Presumably, hopefully he did nothing and it's a bad situation. But if he's going to play football, it's a steal, right? If just on his football abilities, he can play. And I like what you said, Jeff. It's been since Terrell Suggs that they had a guy they had a pocket with, I forget the guy's name was free agent. I actually wanted the Chiefs game. He's bounced from here to Green Bay to, he's bounced all over the place. Anyway, I'm drawing a blank, but they had a pocket of it. But they haven't had really that.
Zadarius Smith and those guys you're talking about?
Yes, Zadarius Smith. That's exactly what I was trying to think of. And so, but Mike Green, if he brings some edge to them and can get after the quarterback and beat some guys one-on-one, Starks in the secondary, I do think they got better. I think they got better. I give him a B plus. And I think this is about as much better as you can get when you've got the heavy quarterback. So I got no fault with what the Baltimore Ravens are doing. None. Right? Like Harbaugh's going to get the most of them. And the other thing that I like about them is that they will play their guys. Right? They're all going to play. They all get on the field. Right? And I'm sure that's some of it's coaching, but it's also the one thing that they do really well is they are married very well to their coaching staff when it comes to their personnel. So they will get them on the field. I think that's one thing you can count on. You can count on Gann Asphalt and Concrete to give you the smoothest, best-looking parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Your favorites are back, Kansas City. Now for a limited time at all your KC Whataburger locations, get the Mushroom and Swiss Burger, 2 large beef patties, Swiss American cheese, fire-roasted mushrooms, and creamy au jus. How about the sweet and spicy bacon burger? 2 large beef patties, American and Monterey Jack cheese, bacon, grilled onions, and topped with sweet and spicy pepper sauce. Or grab the patty melt, even the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich. They're all perfect with the Whataburger Banana Pudding Shake. Remember, Whataburger's open 24 hours a day with breakfast served from 11 p to 11 a. And don't forget, you can get all your Whataburger favorites and more by downloading the Whataburger app with the QR code. Whataburger, proud sponsor of the Red Gold and Bold podcast. Proud sponsor of my lunch, too. Love the patty melt. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Buffalo Bills. Shocker, right? Josh Allen and the fellas disappointed yet again. What do you think of what the Bills were able to get done, Jeff?
Of all the teams we're talking about, I think they were probably the quietest in terms of making splashy moves. I think Josh Palmer quietly could be a good receiver for them. It brings a little more explosiveness. I mean, he fits into that whole receiver by committee approach they have over there. But I thought when he was with the Chargers, he had some flashes where he was just like really showcase a lot of great downfield speed. So he might help them. I think the draft, Maxwell Hairston at corner, Landon Jackson at edge, your guy. I think you see some where they want to go here. If Joey Bosa can be healthy and be what he used to be for them, I think that's really the key for their offseason moves really playing out and being successful, because we talk about their offense all the time. It's defense that kills them in the postseason. They have to be able to get to the quarterback. They have to be better on the back end. So I like the idea of adding a corner, adding some edge rushers. They got a defensive tackle in the draft as well. Larry Ogunjobi's over there. I think he's an underrated player. I think that bolstering their defense was a big thing for them, but I think overall I give them a C+.
Okay, C+. Wow. All right.
Is that your lowest grade yet?
Yeah. It is. It
Yeah.
is. Not liking the Bills. What about his wideouts, Jeff? How can Brandon Bean didn't get some wideouts, dumbass?
That's it, Josh Palmer.
Yeah. Well, that was, if people don't know, we're referencing the fact that he goes on.
He made one off.
Yeah, they were critical again of the wideout position. Sam, how's it look from Buffalo's perspective for you?
Yeah, I'm higher on Buffalo, but this was the one that if you separate the draft and the off season, I think I'd have pretty vastly different grades on those two items, because this is a team that spent most of its money locking up its own players. It was a similar offseason, I think, to what the Chiefs had. But then they had a little bit of free agent dollars, and they gave Josh Palmer 3 for $36. I cannot figure out why that's a good deal for the Bills. That's a lot of money for Josh Palmer. But then the draft happens, and I really like what they did in the draft, because the Bills struggled against the pass last year. And the reason they struggled against the pass is they were 25th in the league in time to pressure. They don't blitz a lot, so they rely on their defensive line to get a lot of pressure. When you look at their draft, first of all, they, like Jeff mentioned, they do sign Joey Bosa, but I don't think that they're just dependent on Joey Bosa solving everything, because 3 of their top 4 picks are defensive linemen. They get Landon Jackson that falls to them in the 3rd round for really good value. And the other spot to improve your pass defense is, of course, cornerback. They get Maxwell Hairston in the 1st round, and then they not only double down on cornerback, they triple down on cornerback in the draft and just say, this is a position, like, we need one of these guys to develop and one of these guys to pan out. I think you've got to ding them a little bit because they traded up twice on, I think it was the second and third day combined of the draft. But I love what they did in the draft. I love what the positions they addressed in the draft. They realized that the premium positions were also positions that fit exactly what they need. And somehow those needs fall with a guy like Landon Jackson falling to the 3rd round. I gave the Bills an A-.
A-. Okay. Is that your highest grade? I think it is, isn't it?
I think so.
I think that's the first A, right?
Plus, yep. A-. Like it. I went B+. I'm with you on what they did defensively. I'll throw in another name that you haven't mentioned, and that's Deion Walker. They doubled down at D tackle. And Deion Walker was a guy I liked for the Chiefs because he's a Spags type guy, 6'7.5". 325, 330-pound defensive tackle. And one of the things when we were going over, I can't remember which previous podcast it was, but we were going over like the way too early mock draft from a year ago. He was projected into like the top 15, right? Now, that doesn't mean he obviously did not play up to that level, right? And so he didn't go there. But this is a massive individual. And it kind of –
and Soren, tell people the Bills got him in the 4th round this year.
They got him in the 4th round. Yeah, they got him in the 4th round. And so they got a 6'7" or 6'6" plus Landon Jackson, a 6'7" plus Deion Walker. They've already got length, in Gregory Rousseau. And, plus they throw in Joey Bosa. The depth of their defensive line, Bosa's going to play 8 or 9 games for them. You're hoping it's the playoff games when he gets there. That'll happen. But their depth of defensive line, we haven't even mentioned Ed Oliver, who's their best defensive lineman. The depth of their defensive line is kind of scary. They've got a lot of big bodies that they can throw at. I think they're going to bat down some passes because they've got a lot of length up there as well. And I'm with you. They put a lot into trying to upgrade that secondary. Hairston is a burner. Hairston, I didn't hear a lot about him, but once they took him, everybody loved him. Everybody loved the pick. I did notice, I don't know why, where everybody was hiding about Hairston beforehand. He ran the fastest 40. This year, so that was a reason that would usually make you a darling. But I'm with you. I like what Buffalo did. I definitely think they got better, and I think they're going to be a tough out. I think both Baltimore and Buffalo Like if the Chiefs are going to go through their down slump, they missed the Super Bowl for a couple of years. It's because one of these two teams are going to go through. Like I think Buffalo's good. In fact, B plus. If they'd done, I'm with you. I don't get what their 500-yard receiver given that kind of money to. Like I don't get like Laviska Shenault might be just as good. They got him for chump change in a trade. I think, or no, I guess he was a free agent. I'm thinking when he got traded the year before, but Laviska Shenault, who if you throw him the ball, if you get, who's say he's not the same guy. So I don't get the Palmer thing. If you had money, I would have spent it elsewhere, but I give the Bills a B plus. I think they're going to be tough. Texans, Jeff, what do you got for the Texans?
Kind of a weird team to assess. Probably the hardest, just because they've made so many different moves. When you trade Laramie Tunsil and you bring in Cam Robinson, Lincoln Tomlinson, you get rid of Kenyon Green. You draft 2 receivers from the same school, Iowa State. I've never seen that before, but you understand what they're trying to do. They want to get better up front. They were a mess on their offensive line. I think they're throwing a lot of numbers at it. They drafted the kid that Sam likes, a Kansas City kid, Ursary. Also took another Kansas City kid late in Graham Mertz, so give him credit for that locally. But I think overall, I think I'm okay with what they did. They wanted to boost the receivers. Obviously, had a lot of injuries last year. They wanted to improve the offensive line. I just don't know if these guys they brought in can do that. And so I'm going C plus here too. I think it was more of a numbers game for them, trying to just add depth and options in case it hopes one of these guys pops or a few of these guys pop for them.
Yeah, that's interesting. Sam, where'd you go?
I went D plus for the Texans. I really do not like the Texans off season. And the reason is because, first of all, CJ Stroud took a step back from year 1 to year 2, in which I had said all off season, I think it's going to be a tough thing for him because he was so good deep down the field and teams are going to take that away. What's his adjustment back going to be? But it wasn't CJ Stroud. It was the fact he had no time to throw the ball. I mean, we saw that the Chiefs beat up on the Texans offensive line twice. They have a terrible offensive line, and Laramie Tunsil to Cam Robinson is a significant downgrade at the most important position on on the offensive line. Like, that's the one spot where the Texans were not that bad on the offensive line last year, and they immediately in the offseason downgrade that spot. Like, Cam Robinson after the trade to Minnesota was horrible last year. And then they did sign
People in Jacksonville can tell you that
he was horrible before.
Exactly.
Yes,
and they don't know why they gave him the second contract.
Yeah.
And I don't understand what they're trying to do with the offensive line. I mean, they sign a left guard, and Tomlinson, who had the 5th highest pressure rate allowed among left guards last year. I do like that they drafted, or look, they don't have a first round pick. I do like it. They're in the second round. They do take Ursary just to address it and somehow, but we learned from the Chiefs last year, a second round offensive lineman is not going to solve your offensive line problems. And I don't know what else they did to make me think their offensive line is better. And I agree with Jeff. They needed receivers. They got receivers, but I don't think they're putting CJ Stroud in a good position to succeed.
I'll tell you what happened is they screwed up last year. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Like, they poured all this money out there in free agency and didn't really, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, we owe what? Like, our cap is what? That's what it looks like happened to me, is that they had a plan that got out of hand last year, and they did all these things, and we talk about nobody went for it. They went for it last year, right? They threw everything at it and said, we'll deal with the consequences later, and we'll worry about it later. Well, now they're worrying about it. And the Laramie Tunsil trade was that. Like, we've got to unload something here, because they've got to go. They're going to have to pay CJ Stroud. After this year, they're going to have to pay him. They're already $200 million on the books for next year, right? And so I'm with you. They got worse. The left tackle on the offensive line was a problem to begin with, right? So I'm not sure what and I don't know how they necessarily would have done better. I do like that they threw wide receivers on the board and are trying to give some weapons to their quarterback. I'm not sure what the Christian Kirk plan is, right? A lot of his money stayed in Jacksonville, so it's a lot cheaper than what they did over there. They did throw some free agent money at some guys on the offensive line, so maybe it'll come together, but they've got a problem at left tackle. And I think CJ Stroud's on that point where it's like, we've seen him make some great plays. We know he's tough. We know we'll hang in there, but he hadn't quite, he's not Joe Burrow yet, right? You're not ready to say he can just do it all for us.
He's got 2 more cheap years, by the way, Soren. He's got the 3rd and 4th year, and then they'll have the 5th year option.
Oh, he's got 2 or 3 more that they'll do it, but I'm saying they're going to have to pay him. The extension comes after year 3, and yes, he'll remain cheap, but they'll have to put that contract on him, and then there's no going back. And so I listen. He'll be cheap he'll be cheaper in year 5 under an extension than he would be with just throwing a 5th year tag on him.
Yeah.
So they'll buy into it. You get a quarterback discount through about 6 years, right? It's year 7 where it really gets expensive, but they're just going to have to put that contract on him, and then that will start to limit what you can do when that big contract's out there. So not liking what the Texans did at all. All right.
What grade did you give him?
I gave him a C-. Give him a C-. Jeff, Cincinnati Bengals. They are forever considered a contender. Will they actually be a contender? They were a contender in name last year. I don't know how much they actually were a threat. Obviously, they fumbled out of the gate the way they usually do. What do you think of the Bengals?
Yeah, well, they couldn't stop shooting themselves in the foot last year. But their offseason comes down. It's really simple. Is the money they spend on these receivers going to be worth it? Is Trey Henderson going to be a part of this team? And is Shamar Stewart going to be a guy that could actually get sacks? Because he never did that in college. And so for me, I don't have a problem with them paying T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I feel like that's your strength. That's how you want to roll. Your quarterback's got to stay happy. You're a big fan of that. Then you go with that. Now, Hendrickson, I think, is getting to a place here where they got to start figuring out what to do with it. I think if he's not going to be there, you should have made that deal before the draft, so you could have done more stuff. And I don't know if Shamar Stewart, like I said, is the answer. He looks the part, but for a guy who's never had more than 1.5 sacks at any point any season in his college career, that's a bit of a red flag. And they didn't have enough money to do anything else in free agency that was worth talking about. So This is kind of it. It's 4 players.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm with you. Like they basically, Hendrickson, nothing has been done. I assume nothing's going to get done. Yeah. I don't mind trading for future picks. To me, I would always trade for future picks because teams value them less. So I would always be looking to do that. And so I don't mind. Now, that's not why they did it.
Yeah.
They didn't do it because they're the Bengals and they screwed things up, right? And they'll end up making a bad deal that somehow gets them more right now somehow than just going ahead and saying, okay, we're going to stock the cupboards for years to come. But, I think they're going to have a holdout. Where did they get better?
Yeah. I mean, I look at the Bengals and look, Jeff's right. They spent all their money on the 2 wide receivers. Do they just think their whole defensive problems last year were Lou Anarumo's fault? Because that's what it looks like.
I think they did.
That's how they're acting.
They didn't address their defense at all. And you look at their draft after Stewart, who I think 16 was a real reach for Stewart. Even if you think he's a good player, I think it was a real reach. Their next 3 positions are linebacker, guard, and linebacker. 2 linebackers in the first 4 rounds of the draft. I hated what the Bengals did this offseason. It's, to me, I thought it looks very much like the team that should have traded T. Higgins, recoup the cap space, and recoup the picks for him, because that's what they could use, is cap space to improve the defense and picks to improve the defense. Like I said, and if you just think that the defensive coordinator is terrible, you think it's like a Bob Sutton situation after 2018 and that you bring in somebody different and it's immediately snap of the fingers going to be better, that's all you have to hang your hat on for why you think the Bengals defense will be better, because personnel-wise, they didn't do anything to improve their defense.
They added, as Jeff said, they added Shamar Stewart, and they're going to count on him being better in the pros than he was in college. And there are a lot of people that think he will be. So, but that's it. I mean, that's the only place. And they're going to lose, and we all presume they're going to lose Hendrickson, which that means they got worse, right? So what's your draft grade, Jeff? Or, what's your overall grade?
No, C-.
C-. Sam?
I gave him the same grade, C-.
I give him a D. I think it sucks. I think they're the worst. I think, I don't know, they seem to have gotten cornered in that they had to keep Higgins and Chase. First of all, part of this is screwing up not going and getting Jamar Chase done earlier. If you get Jamar Chase done earlier, it gets easier to walk on Higgins and then go spend that money someplace else, which is what they should have done.
You know who cornered them? Their own quarterback.
Well, I know, and that's the thing, is if they'd already had Chase in the mix, they could be like, listen, we gave you your number 1 guy. There'll be other guys. We can't be, bogging down, on the offensive side. But and then even then, if that's what you're going to do, then and you want to be the '80s Coryell Chargers, then do it. Then go get more offense. But they didn't even do that. They're just the same offense that wasn't able to overcome the defense last year, and they really didn't do much to the defense. So I think they're brutal. All right, last question. The Chiefs, are they worthy of being? I've seen a number of power polls that put them at number one. Are they worthy of being the number one team in the power polls? It's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything, but should they be at the top of the rankings right now, Jeff?
Well, you know how I feel about these rankings.
You love them.
I love them. Yeah, I love them, but I love draft grades.
How many meetings at NFL.com have you been like, we got to do more rankings?
Oh, my God. I'm glad I don't do them anymore because they were not fun to do when I was there. You know what? Look, here, I understand the appeal, but the Eagles won the championship last year, going away, blowout win. Like, they've lost, a handful of players. I think that they're still the best team. At this stage of the season, until you play the game, you go off what you last saw on the field. And the last thing I saw on the field was the Eagles being the most dominant team. And the Chiefs should be number two. They won the AFC. So I'd be happy with that. But to say the number one, I don't know. We still don't know how their offensive line is going to be, which was their biggest problem last year. And so for me, if you haven't improved that yet, decidedly, then I'm sticking with the Eagles.
Okay. But they should be number two?
Yeah.
Okay. Sam?
Yeah, I agree with Jeff on all accounts, actually. First of all, the meaningless of this on May 9th. But I don't really see why the Chiefs would have leapfrogged the Eagles. I mean, it wasn't a close game. I mean, that was a blowout game, even if you think they've closed the gap. Look, the Chiefs went 15-1 last year with their starters. They did win a remarkable amount of close games on six times they won on the last snap of the game last year. I think that record could be a bit misleading. I think it's a credit to their team and their veterans and their coaching staff and their front office. They did win 15 games with that group last year, but let's not let it mask the issues this team had last year, which was, can they protect Patrick Mahomes? What's going to be our biggest question as this team opens up training camp? Can they protect Patrick Mahomes? I like that they addressed that in free agency and the draft, but those are still questions. Those haven't been answered. There's been the attempts at answering. It's possible they've answered those, and therefore it's possible once week one starts, we're all saying yes, they should be number one on this list. But I just think it's too early for that.
A lot of weight being put on that game against the Eagles, right? And your guys' analysis there, it's like that is the defining role. That is who they are. The other games that they played, which
the Eagles were a pretty good team all year.
Yeah,
they were. But I mean, everything you're talking about is protecting the quarterback. Agreed. I mean, I agree that's job number one. But they played 19 other games. 18 of them they tried and they lost one of them. Last play, yes, but they lost. I mean, the goal is still to win the game, right? That's still what it's all about. And so I do.
You think the Eagles were a worse team than the Chiefs last year then?
No, I don't. But I think the Eagles have lost more this offseason than the Chiefs have.
In what way?
Two of their defensive linemen.
They've lost Becton. They lost as well.
They lost Becton at guard.
Is he like that big of a loss? He can't be replaced.
I mean,
he wasn't there a year before.
No, he can be replaced, but I mean, it's still a loss. I mean, what do you want me to say? But they lost a lot up front, and I do think that they're a combustible team, right? Like they were about ready to implode early in the year, and they did implode the year before. Okay, so that's part of who the Eagles are as well, right? Like
sure. So how are the Chiefs better then?
I have absolutely no problem with the Eagles being number one. Well, they're better because they have two potential fixes at left tackle. And they're not going to play the Eagles every week. And the Eagles aren't going to have the rush that they had last year.
Who do you have, sir?
Well,
do you have the Chiefs one or do you have the Eagles one?
The note I put was I don't have a problem with the ranking. Right?
Well, come on.
Where would I put it? Where would I put it? I would put Philadelphia number one.
There we go.
Okay. There you go. That's the question.
We'll all acknowledge this is super early. We've got the right to change this once training camp starts.
Well, if it's super early and these don't matter, why are you so pissed about me?
I'm not pissed. You're pissed.
Why are you fighting with every ounce of your moral fiber.
You're fighting it. You agree. You're fighting. You agree with us.
That's right. He
And
was trying to sneak his way into it.
I'll compliment you for the skill of arguing with us, even though you have the exact same answer.
And my answer, if I were doing a ranking, I would put Philadelphia at number 1. But for those, and there are a number of them out there that have the Chiefs at number 1, the fact that they've been to 3 straight Super Bowls, the fact that they won all the games they won last year, I just hear kind of the inspiration behind this was I heard people like it was like nationally like this was ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. Consistently year in, year out, the best team in the NFL is the Chiefs. Okay, the best quarterback in the NFL is Patrick Mahomes, and right now the best coach in the NFL is Andy Reid. Philadelphia won last year, right? But if that's all it took, then the Chiefs would have been number 1 coming into each year, and they're not a lot of the times. I think the Chiefs and Eagles are, wherever you want to rank them, are much closer than anyone that says that defines the difference between these two teams is that one game. They're much closer than that.
Yeah, they were last year at the end.
I think the
But
best
it's not
synopsis
last year. It's now. You don't think they're closer now? I think they were closer then. But I won't argue that point. Because we had the one game head to head. But I think that was one game that went as bad as it could go. I think the Eagles were the better team and they deserved to win. But I think those two teams were closer than that one game made it appear. But I definitely think, even if the Eagles are number 1 and I would put them number 1, it is absolutely very close right now.
Oh, I don't think that. I think the edge rusher situation, losing Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat, they had 2 guys in that game, Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith in the Super Bowl, who had sacks. And Nolan Smith had a big game, had a really good game. I think he dropped Trey Smith on a run play that's been going around virally. Their secondary is strong. I think they're going to add Justin Simmons in the offseason to replace CJ Gardner-Johnson. Where they've lost players, they have answers. I think the Chiefs have not answered their biggest question. So that's why I would say they're number 1.
I agree with Soren. The gap is definitely closed. I like the Chiefs offseason better than I like the Eagles offseason because the Eagles couldn't retain everybody. And when you look at who the Chiefs lost, I touted that Justin Reed had a much better year last year than a lot of people gave him credit for. I do think that's a loss, but I think the Chiefs are in a better spot than they were a year ago. To end that Super Bowl anyway. I think to Soren's point, you have to think the Chiefs have the highest floor. They've got a quarterback who's never lost an AFC championship game in regulation. Like, they absolutely have to have the highest floor. Like, what's going to be more surprising, if the Eagles go 9-8 or if the Chiefs go 9-8? To me, it would be more stunning if the Chiefs went 9-8. And so that's why I totally reasonable to me to have the Chiefs number 1. I just would still have the Eagles number 1 right now.
Yeah. And that's why these rankings are so ridiculous, because there's no real criteria for it. You can make any kind of criteria you want to make the team you want to be. I'll just go off, where were they at the end of last year? And what have they done? And
what have they done, right? And what have they done?
Do we know if Jalen Moore can play left tackle or Josh Simmons? If they were out there with a left tackle problem, we don't know that.
We absolutely know Jalen Moore can play left tackle.
Okay, can he play it successfully?
Play it a high. Can he play it better than Joe Thuney? I think so. I do. We
thought Wanye Morris could.
Well, but
none of us thought Wanye Morris could.
Yeah. No one
until he started playing left tackle. Then he wasn't good.
No, the three of us were not touting Wanye Morris as a solution.
You've got to come sweat your ass off and stand next to Sam and I at training camp at least once or twice, and you will hear where I'm like, this blanking guy. Really? Okay. On some folks like, hey, guess what? Tubby's walking off the field again. Like, nobody here was thought Wanya Morris was the answer.
Okay.
And there were serious questions about Kingsley Suamataia as well.
So we think the left tackle and left guard situation is going to be good for the Chiefs.
I think it's going to be better.
Okay. Well, that's not good, right? Because it was horrible.
No, you're right. It's like the Raiders. Have they gotten better? Does that make them great? No. They just make him mediocre, but mediocre at left tackle, and even let's not even say average. Like it will be a big improvement for this team.
And left guard.
But let's not rule out there is ceiling that they've got to figure it out. What's his name? The guy who does Amazon Prime wears the hood under the jacket, the left tackle for the Rams.
Andrew Whitworth.
Andrew Whitworth was a guard. Hit free agency as a guard, okay? And the Bengals finally kept him and kicked him out to left tackle. Then he hit free agency again, and nobody really wanted Andrew Whitworth, and he went to the Rams for not that much, right? So there are guys that have been behind somebody or in a lesser spot that have gotten the chance to shine and have played well. Andrew Whitworth's the biggest example because I remember I beat that drum. That was one of the guys I'm like, why aren't you signing Andrew Whitworth? And he ended up being, he was never the best left tackle in football, but he was a good player. It is possible Jalen Moore's that guy. It's possible Josh Simmons is healthy. It's possible neither one of them get it done and they're the same team as last year. A team that went 15-2.
Nobody's saying they're not. I said they're number 2.
But if them in the exact same spot you have them.
But if they're better than that, they're better than a 15-2 team.
So the Eagles can't be better?
But better is not just measurable by record. I mean, the Chiefs analytics and measurables did not put them as a 15-2 team last year.
Agreed. And they didn't do that for the Patriots, but year in, year out. I mean, I think the one thing we can all agree on, the Chiefs win in all the margins.
Yeah, there's a reason they win close games.
Somebody runs DVOA at me one more time, I may shove it up their ass. I mean, I'm not kidding. I
will be running DVOA.
Well, I know you will be quoting it, but like you don't come at it like dumbass DVOA because where's Baltimore's championship? Because they always win that, right?
Well, I don't know.
You can't toss aside the whole statistical measurement.
No, it is a great tool, but it is not the end all be all defining moment. There are times in the game where it's more important to do certain things. The Chiefs always do that. There are elements of the game that are not measured. And listen, gamblers will run around talking about, for years, it was your yards per rush differential. How many yards per rush do you give up? Which is a lot of what DVOA is, your yards per play. Right? Oh, and it's better because we factor in what's the score and where are we in the game. I grant you all that. But, it does not define everything that goes into football. It's a great tool.
All I can say is the Chiefs have played the core Chiefs have played the core Eagles 3 times. The Eagles have won twice, and they probably could have won the third time if Jalen Hurts didn't fumble the ball and they got a tough holding.
And the Chiefs could have won a second time if Marquez Valdez-Scantling could catch. I mean,
well, he didn't catch it, right?
So
I'm just going up their results. I'm just saying they've beaten this team twice, and they kicked their ass last year. That counts for something.
It does, and that's why they're number 1. That's why we all have them number 1 on our list. Yeah. We all have them number 1, so we're all in total agreement. We're in total agreement with our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Comes to your parking lot, make sure you make a great first and last impression with your clients, with your customers. GannAsphalt.com, one contractor, all things parking lot. Our friends at Whataburger. It's back for a limited time. The mushroom and Swiss burger, the sweet and spicy bacon burger, my favorite, the patty melt, and the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich. Get it? Wash it down with a banana pudding shake. Remember, Whataburger is open 24 hours a day. And if you haven't heard, Best Me Wellness is now Suede Cannabis. You can find the location nearest you and shop online at SuedeCannabis.com. Or Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star.